Good afternoon. This is Rebecca Gill, and I'm thrilled to have you all join me today. I guess I should say it's afternoon for me. It might be evening or morning for you based on where you are in the world. Regardless of that, I'm thankful for having you here. Just a few little points of logistics before we jump in with today's training. Uh, Question right off the bat was, will there be a recording available? Yes. The GoToWebinar software will send a video via email out within about an hour or two after this is finished. I will also post it to my YouTube channel, so it's available just ongoing, and you can reference it at any time. So no problems there. Share it with whoever, reference it. Hopefully you'll find enough value in it so that you will want to reference it more than once and often. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about WooCommerce SEO. And when I say WooCommerce, I use WooCommerce, but really what we're going to be talking about today will apply to other e-commerce software. So just because I am using WooCommerce as an example, know that the ideas and the concepts will certainly apply to other software. And so have no fear with that. Okay, so let's just kind of jump in and start walking through. So WooCommerce SEO is very similar to regular SEO. The difference is just really one important thing is the process that you would go through and the things you're going to worry about are fundamentally the same. The difference with WooCommerce SEO is you have more moving parts. Just like when you actually go into the software, if you have a vanilla version of WordPress, you've got pages and posts and tags and categories. Well, when you start to introduce plugins like WooCommerce, now you've got products and product categories and product tags and storefronts, and there's just more moving parts. And I want to talk through some of the challenges and the things that you can do to resolve those challenges and help put your store at the forefront of search. So let's start with keyword research. Keyword research is basically just looking for and researching possible phrases that can help your store, your product rank and search. And what you're trying to do is trying to figure out what the average buyer or your particular niche might search for when they're looking for your products or your offering. A lot of people skip keyword research because they get so excited about the other things that they're doing and launching their product that they tend to skip right over this part. And it's a really important part, and it needs to really, be paid attention to closely at the, the launch of the site. And if you didn't do it at that point because maybe you were a startup and you rushed to get to market, that's okay. But make sure you go back and you do that that process, and you're implementing this into the way that you optimize your store and the way that you're marketing your products online. So what are some of the common problems that I see? Well, first and foremost is the stores launch without any thought process to the keyword research. And that makes it really disjointed. It makes it really difficult for the search engines to figure out how they can use your content and your offering and your products to solve the problems of people who are using the search engine results page. The other, common problem is it's haphazard and it's just really quick. Someone's like, okay, I got to launch this product. I'm going to look really quick, and they just select it, slam it into the Yoast box, and for focus keyword, and they go kind of on their own way. That's a problem. Again, it really needs to be closely tied to who you're helping and what they might be searching for to help solve their problems. What does your product solve as a problem? Very broad keywords, for example, I'm not really selling shoes. If that's what my store is about, I've got to really narrow that down because I don't want to be competing with the Zappos out there. I want to make sure that I am targeting keyword phrases that are specific to my products or my categories, and that those are really narrow enough that I can compete in search, and the people that are coming are already pre-qualified. That's the beautiful thing about doing good keyword research, is when you really research the right phrases and you really think about, what are good keyword phrases to match up to who you serve and what you offer. Everybody's pre-qualified. They're coming in through search, and they've already pre-qualified themselves for what you offer because their searchers will closely match up to what you're providing, and it makes it so worth the effort to put into keyword research and doing competitive research and things like that. And like the last comment, keywords are not relevant to the actual buyers. That, for an example of this would be, and I've used this example before, is I sell, or I used to sell Genesis themes, which are their child themes for the Genesis framework, they're website templates, right? So if someone knew about Genesis, they would know to search for a Genesis child theme. If they didn't, they just wanted a WordPress, template, they'd have no idea for that. And so by not thinking through who my buyer was and what they might be searching for, I could have potentially missed out on a lot of search because I wouldn't have been matching those up and those phrases up and making them relevant to the buyers. Now, before I go on to best practices, I want to make a comment about something that I saw online. I think it was last week or the week before, and I shared it in the Facebook group, SEO Launchpad. But it's 50% of searches today are 4 or more words. And when I was just doing some review of what a very large client is ranking for in individual URLs, virtually everything was coming up with longer phrases, and I was really surprised at the volumes of search of people actually looking for those longer phrases. But it all blends together, and it supports that number that I saw. People are searching for longer phrases, and you need to remember this when you are doing your keyword research, whether that keyword research is for an actual product or whether it is for a blog post that may be supporting the product and trying to bring in, search to push over to the product for sales. So what are some best practices? Well, I want you to really research what you're selling, the manufacturers, and your competitors. Don't just go to like the Google AdWords tool and throw in whatever you think is the keyword phrase. Look to see what content the manufacturer, if you're reselling a product, is what are they saying, right? Who are they speaking to? What are your top competitors online? I say online because it's not your brick and mortar, it's your online competitors. What are they using? What are they ranking for? What are they ranking for not good enough that you could take over? Do your research, because that will help you brainstorm potential keywords and put them on what I call as a seed list. Seed list is just a big list of keyword phrases that we would like to rank for our products and things like that. It's important, right? You gotta have that research. A great place to find some research is going to Google Search Console. See what you are already ranking for but never seeing traffic for. If you go into Google Search Console, there is a report that will show you all of the keyword phrases that you're ranking for, but you might be on page 10. Well, guess what? Those are wonderful, pieces of data that you can use to decide, is that a good keyword phrase or a bad keyword phrase? If it's a good one, you decide whether or not you have existing content that can fill that need, or if you need to create new content in support of that, and again, then route people over to whatever it is that you're selling. Great places to find that information. Pull the search volumes for whatever you put on your seed list to see what people actually search for. You are going to be surprised at the things people search for. It scares me, but you can use it to your advantage. I say it scares me because the more and more keyword research I do for clients, the more weirdness I realize is in the world. But that's okay, because that gives me data, and that data makes me intelligent, and it helps me better guide my clients into the right type of phrases that will bring in the best potential website visitor, and it will convert. And then we always rank these keywords for relevance, really what closely ties to what you offer and who you serve. So what are the tools I love to use? Well, in general, I love to use Google Search Console. I love KW Finder. I love SEMrush to find competitor information. SpyFu is another great tool for competitor information. Amazon, if you're selling any type of product that would apply to Amazon, going and looking at Amazon's categories and their auto suggest and things like that, wonderful way to find some phrases, as is Google's auto complete and the related searches at the bottom of the page. All really good places to help brainstorm some seed lists and then really figure out what might apply to you. Okay, so when you're doing that keyword research, I don't want you to forget your website personas. or their individual buyer journeys. Now, if those phrases are new to you, do not panic. We're going to talk about them a little bit. And again, while you're doing that and you're looking at those keyword phrases and you're thinking about like your competitor, what they might be searching for, you pull a report up in SEMrush and you're like, wow, look at those 2,000 phrases. Don't get overwhelmed by those. Just start to look at those into how they might fit on your website with what you offer in your store, and then also how do they apply to the buyer's journey. And a buyer's journey being awareness and consideration and then purchase. Most people, if you have not a very, very simple product like screws, you might say, okay, I know I have an issue, and that's like that awareness, right? Here's an example. This is a real world example. If you've not noticed, I've been kind of quiet online these last couple of months because I moved to the other side of Michigan, 4 hours away. I've built a brand new house. I sold my house. I traveled through Europe with my daughter and sent her off to college. So that's been a lot of change. Well, in amongst all of that change, I decided I was going to buy some vintage doors for my office. I love vintage products and I love recycling and repurposing. The problem with that is when I bought those doors, I just didn't make the investment of those stupid doors. I now had to find screws to hold them up in my house because they were extremely thick and extremely heavy, and anything that the builder had wasn't going to be able to hold them up in my office. The other problem was there were no handles in the doors, and any typical handle that you would buy at a store wasn't going to fit either because these were vintage. They already had holes that were, far apart because it's 100-year-old doors, and then I needed to keep really the theme and the look of that door and make it consistent. So guess what? I had to buy it online, and I bought a lot of stuff online for my new house because I'm living now in rural Michigan, but just because I was particular, right? But think about my buying journey. All of a sudden, my builder calls me up and says, hey, I don't know how you think I'm going to hang up these doors because nothing we have is going to fit. And I don't know how you're going to close these doors because nothing that I have at my suppliers is going to fit either. Well, that's kind of the awareness mode for me, right? I really didn't even know I had a problem until he said it. So I start trying to think through what would be potential phrases that I could, search to find this stuff. Now, my builder thinks I'm not going to find stuff, but he forgets that I do SEO as, a profession. So I do know how to like, be creative with search terms. I will tell you, it took me a good month to really find what I needed for these stupid doors. And I love my doors, but at that time they were stupid to me because I realized that was kind of a mistake. But think about that process. I went through awareness of knowing there was a problem. I started to think through like what I might need. I started to do searches. The search phrases I was using at the beginning of my awareness process, completely different than what I got through the consideration. Once I finally figured out what it is I was searching for and how I was going to, be able to find the right product and compare products, right? Because I had to make sure that the thickness and the size and the dimensions and everything and the weights, all of it was going to be able to jive with these massive doors. And then finally the purchase, where I started to like really do the final comparison, look at maybe shipping, availability, and things like that. That was a journey for me. And my search phrases changed as I went through that process. Now, the long, story ended with my doors are up, they're beautiful. I spent way more money on stuff than I wanted to, but guess what? If you're running a store, that's beautiful for you, the store owner, because I had no choice. Once I finally found what I needed, I couldn't find it really other places. You solved my problem. I didn't care what I was going to pay, and I paid, just so you know, for the hardware. I paid as much for that hardware almost as I did my vintage doors, and my doors were not cheap. But again, I didn't care because I had a problem that had to be solved, and I was using online stores to solve it. That's the process I want you to go through in your head when you're thinking about keyword research. I want you to remember me and my big old fat doors, and I want you to think about how that kind of process with your buyer relates to what you sell, right? We go through a journey, and you need to make sure that your keyword research and what you're brainstorming in your seed list is going to support that journey. It's not all about the products. It's not all about the categories. It's about your store as a whole and helping solve people's problems. And you can do that in a number of ways, whether it be comparison blog posts, how-to blog posts, things like that. You need to think about all of those. You might be saying, dang, Rebecca, you just spent a whole lot of time on that. And that is because it is critical. It's one of the biggest areas where people make mistakes. And it's why I want to just drive that home with you. And I spend the most time on SEO projects working with this with clients because they've never thought of it this before. They think just high, really volume search terms, which are not what they need. They really need search phrases, both short and long, that are going to really resonate with who they're helping and making sure that all connects. And we're capturing the search across the buyer's journey. So let's talk just a minute about these buying groups. What would be kind of buying persona groups and that kind of thing? Well, it's really varied, and it's your website, your store is not going to have just all of these. It's going to have a couple or maybe one, but everybody's different. It could be age, whether you're a teen, you're middle-aged mom like I am, you're in your retirement years, gender, income level, geography. If you're selling like business to business, it could be industry and business size. Again, that's the stages of that buying cycle. There's just so many different ways. Is it a repeat customer, a new customer? There's different types of groups. And again, when you're building up your seed list and you're thinking about what content you want to have on your store and how you want to present that, think through all of those. Now let's look just real quick at buyer persona groups, for a potential like shoe store, right? So 10-year-old boy, basically my son, he's 12. What is he going to look for? He's going to look for cool sneakers or cool tennis shoes or things like that. It's going to be his verbiage, right? Not my verbiage. What would be the 16-year-old girl? My daughter's like 18 right now. What would she look for? Well, she might think the Kardashians are really cool. I don't, but she might. She might be looking for Kim Kardashian's shoes to see what shoes Kim Kardashian wears, or like ones that look like things that she wears. Not that we could ever afford what Kim Kardashian is buying. Trendy shoes in 2018, prom shoes. I mean, there's just various searches that she would do. Well, now you get someone like me. I'm middle-aged. What if I actually had to go to an office, which I did, and I had to wear dress shoes all the time? In fact, I had to wear high heels all the time. And if I had kids that were in sports, I might have to go from work straight to sporting, grab the kids from school, take them to practice, and I'm not really getting home till 10 o'clock at night. What are my pain points? I don't want to be in high heels all day long from, 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. I need something that's comfortable. I might look for comfortable dress shoes. Or let's look at my husband. He is a tall guy. He has size 13 wide or extra wide shoes. Do you know how hard it is to find shoes for him? Super hard, right? He does not care what shoes look like. He cares that they actually fit his fat feet and they're big enough. And again, I'm making, flippant kind of comments about this because I really want you to kind of connect with these different types of personas and think about really, how search does apply to each one. We are all going to search differently, right? We are all going to search for phrases that apply to us. We might just start by typing in shoes, but we're going to quickly realize that that's not a great search term. We need to narrow that down to exactly what we're looking for so we can find the best product to buy, right? That is a journey. Again, you kind of go through that that buying cycle and flow. If I were looking for comfortable dress shoes, I might eventually get to brands that are recommended for this kind of situation. Then I start looking for the brand, and I'm looking for not just comfortable dress shoes, but a specific brand or even a specific style or an event. So many different ways that you can look at the buyers, the personas, and then that journey that they go through. Okay, so once you have these keyword phrases that you feel like they would apply great to your products and that could fit somewhere on the, your store site, what do you do with them? Well, we're going to have to map them to specific pieces of content. You don't want to take your keywords and just throw them like a snowball onto your website and hope that they're going to stick somewhere. People do that, and guess what? That does not work, because what's happening is you're making Google think and you're confusing Google along the way. And when you do that, Google decides you are too much effort and it's not going to rank you. And I don't want that to happen. So what do you have to do? You need to do some site mapping. Now, the majority of people I talk to have never done this. Even really large, successful enterprise level companies don't do site mapping. And what happens is they compete with themselves, they confuse the search engines, they frustrate the actual human visitors. I don't want any of that to happen with your website. I want your store to be clean. I want it to have a clear path. I want Google and humans to know exactly where to go. And and that's why you have to really map out what URL is going to be tied to what specific keyword phrases. And those URLs could be products, individual products, it could be categories, it could be tags, again, blog posts, this main store page. There's so many different places that you can have to have keywords live, but it's a matter of finding where to place them. And you can have multiple keyword phrases per URL, especially in today's environment with semantic search. You want to prevent yourself from having a couple of core problems. The one is just lack of planning and structure. If you don't know where your keywords lie, and neither does the search engines, and therefore they can't use them to benefit you and drive traffic to you. A lot of times people are putting primary keyword phrases into products that may come and go out of stock or seasonality. That can also be challenging because a lot of times a category is a better place for them because the category is a broader set of information and it can really tie together, and it's the right place for not just the keyword, but for that human to land. And then another problem that is common, especially with enterprise level websites, is keyword cannibalism, where you have multiple URLs all targeting the same keyword phrase. Now, if you're using the Yoast SEO tool, it's asking you to put in a focused keyword phrase. If you use the premium version, you can put like 5 different phrases on the different tabs. This is why Yoast is doing that, because that plugin wants you to not have multiple URLs all competing for that same keyword phrase. And it will come back to you and go, hey, you've already put this keyword phrase in 5 times. Are you sure you want to do this again? The problem is the majority of users don't even read that and they ignore it, and they have literally the same URL, or excuse me, different URLs all using that same keyword as their focus phrase. Which one do you link to send visitors to, when they want that? You don't know, Google doesn't know, your users don't know, and everybody's confused. So that's why we have that mapping process. What is the best practices? Well, assign those highest priority keyword phrases, well, especially the ones with more volume, to categories, right? That's going to really help you rank better and better serve your target audience. Have topical areas for seasonal or clearance items. Make it very specific so everybody knows where they lie and how to get to them. Extend usage of keywords into comparison and buyer guides and blog posts. Don't just think about the store, think about supplemental information that can really go after those long tail keyword phrases. And then keep your overall structure. So like your parent-children relationships or those categories, don't make them more than 3 clicks to get to. It's just so frustrating for everybody. It creates really long URLs. It's frustrating to the users. I've gone to stores that I've abandoned because it's literally taken me 5 clicks of drilling down through categories to get to a stinking product. I don't want to do that. Nobody does. And the search engines know that. They're not going to reward you for that either. So what kind of tools can you use to really help streamline you and keep you on track? Well, again, Google Search Console for figuring out what you're currently ranking for, where does it apply. SEMrush will do that in a much more efficient manner for you. It is a premium tool, but it'll take information in Google Search Console that would take you hours to collect and map out, and it can spit it out for you in 30 seconds. Dynamapper can crawl your entire website, as can Screaming Frog, and they can give you a list of URLs and other supplemental data that will really help you in this mapping process. Okay, so just kind of looking at some examples. So if we were to search for UGG boots, right, would you think that we are going to go to a specific product page for that results? No, and Google's not going to display search results like that. Google knows that if someone's looking for UGG boots, they're looking for more of a category, right? They want either a website, store that is dedicated to UGG boots, or they want a store that has UGG boots as a category so that they can send their humans to URLs that have multiple UGG boots available. And so that's why you want to think through that. And then as you're doing your mapping too, you want to make sure that the information that you have is specific so that Google can tell one URL from another, as can humans when they're looking at this search engine results page. Sometimes you'll see a search engine results page that has multiple URLs from the same website, and they're so similar it's really hard to tell one from another, and that's why you really got to think through that mapping process. So Google is much smarter than it was in years past. You can target multiple phrases per URL. When I have like my online SEO course, I take you through a 1-to-1 ratio. I encourage you to start with 1 keyword phrase to URL. That's because you're new to SEO, right? I don't want you to go and try to rank 10 keyword phrases for 1 URL when you're first learning SEO, because it's really overwhelming and challenging. I make you start with the basics. But once you get those basics down, then expand out, and you can have 50 or 100 or 500 keyword phrases ranking for that same URL. Semantic search is making this more and more possible, and you think through that as you're doing your mapping. Okay, so SEO-friendly URLs is another important area, and you notice that search engine results page I just showed you a minute ago had very SEO-friendly URLs and categories and things like that. So we want to make sure that URLs are not convoluted and without structure. We want to make sure that they're not extremely long. Faceted shorts, which will create super long URLs, those are not easy to optimize for, and I've had to literally give up with clients, not give up my client, but give up on those URLs and create other URLs that we have more control over, because a URL that spans from Texas to Michigan isn't going to be one that's going to rank in search, because it's challenging for everybody. So we want to make sure that we keep URLs as short as possible, that they do have structure, they're not constantly changing, and that they're readable, they include your keyword phrase if possible, and they're consistent. If you change them, make sure that you're using 301 redirects, so you're preserving your SEO and your incoming traffic. What tools can help you kind of plan that out and see that? Again, Dynamapper and Screaming Frog, wonderful tools. You will be surprised what your URLs look like if you have a large store. Run them through one of these tools, bring it into Excel for you, and you're going to look at it and go, oh my heavens, what was I thinking, or what is my software thinking? And that will really give you a wake-up call. But the wonderful thing is that wake-up call will help you clean everything up. Okay, so duplicate content is another area where people have lots of challenges. Duplicate content simply refers to the same content displayed under different URLs. Now, when I say this, I don't want you to be freaking out thinking, oh, Google's going to penalize me. Google doesn't usually penalize you for duplicate content, although it does ignore you because you're difficult, right? Nobody likes somebody who's high maintenance and drama and difficult, and Google doesn't like any of that either. It wants things to be very easy, to be able to understand where it should go for specific phrases and search terms. So when you have, competing things, winter boots, snow boots, and it's really the same product living on different extensions right through those categories, that's confusing. So in this example, this is the same exact product as this guy. The problem is the website has it associated with both winter boots and snow boots. Both of those categories are within the URL, and due to that, it creates the same exact product page twice on the website. Well, if you're Google, which one do you choose? It doesn't know, nor does the users, and nobody's going to win in that case scenario. So you just kind of got to make sure you're watching that kind of thing. Some other common problems are the session IDs, non-canonical URLs. The cleaner you make your website, the more easy you make it for people and search engines to crawl around it and digest the content, the better off you are going to be with SEO. Category pages, I talked about these briefly before. What are some common challenges from? Well, we know that they're great places for keywords to live, right, and to position for search. The biggest problem I see with these category pages, and this includes some of the very popular WooCommerce themes, is that there's no content on the category page besides a list of products. And many times the list of products is just pictures and titles. Guess what? That doesn't give anybody information. That doesn't actually visually see all of those images. Now, if you think about Google and trying to crawl that URL and trying to figure out what it is, and there's no sentences, there's no real content whatsoever to help it understand what that URL is, makes it very difficult for it to rank that category page in search. It can't even pull a good sentence to place inside the search engine results page for the description. And a lot of people they just don't even think about this. So if you are here on the webinar and you have a live store for WooCommerce, I would love you to just take a second, multitask, feel free, pull up your website, pull up your store, go to a category page, look at that category page from a different view, not the view of you that knows that your product inside and out. Pretend you're the search engines trying to figure out what that page is about. Do you have any sentences on it that can help Google understand that the nature of this category page, who it is a fit for, and what phrases might be applicable to using in search to bring people to this URL? I would suspect the answer to that is no for at least many of you, so keep that in mind. Okay, so here's a great example. This is actually a WooCommerce WooCommerce theme that they have on the website that they are promoting, and this is the category page. So it is nice and clean, right? I have mice as my category. You've got some stuff over at the side, gaming mouse, but again, no descriptions of anything, no sentences, no descriptions. If I'm the search engines and I first see mice, what that mice, could that be like the mice that might live out in my barn? Or could that be the mice that lives on my desk in my office? Well, first, I don't really know. So then Google has to say, okay, well, I'm smart. I'm gonna use semantic search to go figure out what this is really about, because I don't have enough information. There's no information to tell me what it is about. So with semantic search, Google starts to look for other things on the page that might help it. What this really is, what kind of mice is this? Well, over here, CPUs, RAM, computers, laptops, monitors, those would be indicators to Google that this is about computer mice and not that mice that I don't want living in my barn and eating all my sheep food, right? It helps it kind of figure those things out and kind of separates them. So from that perspective, the categories do help the search engine semantically understand what this URL is about. Kind of. Still no content on there, and still nothing really there for it to pull out from the page and drop on the search engine results page. So as you look for potentially designs for your store and things like that, and you think about what you want to put on your category page, think through that, right? I don't want you to inundate your category page with a bunch of content and so people can't get to your products. I want you to find a balance. And the balance being usability and the ability to show the search engines what this URL is really about and who's it a good fit for. Okay, so product descriptions. This is probably one of my pet peeves, because people will come to me and say, Rebecca, my store's not ranking. I don't know why it's not ranking. I don't get it. And I go look at their product description, and it's maybe one sentence, maybe some choppy bullets that really don't make a lot of sense if you don't know this product exactly. And all of it's copied from the manufacturer because it's a distributed product. Well, guess what? If you are selling a product that is distributed by 5,000 distributors, why, and you're using the exact same manufacturing description that the other 5,000 distributors are using, why would Google want to rank you over them? Well, it doesn't, so it's going to ignore you. You need to think through unique product descriptions, whether it's a product you produce or it's one you resell. Make sure it is unique. Look at it from an outside perspective. Ask someone who doesn't know what you sell to read the text and tell you what it is. Ask them if they can tell what you sell, right? If they don't have a clue, neither will the search engines, nor will the people coming to your site, and they won't have enough information to hit the trigger button. And I go back to my door example where I was looking for that hardware. That was the case for me. I would find websites that were potentially a fit, but guess what? There was not enough information on any of the product pages for me to figure out if it would really fit my situation. And I'll be darned, I am not calling all these websites up, the owners of them, to talk on the phone when I can easily find information on a different site. So think through that, right? address those problems. I love bulleted lists, but make sure that they're descriptive enough and you have other text besides those. Do not just have bulleted lists on your product. You need to have some sentences, because some people don't like to read bullets, and the search engines need something other than bullets to pull off to put on the search engine results page when they list your website. You want them to be unique, keyword rich. You want to use the manufacturer descriptions if you change them, right? I'm not saying you can't use the manufacturer descriptions, but I'm saying augment them, add to them, mix it up, create something new. If you've got reviews, those can help you because that gives more depth to the product. I do want you to think less about keyword density and think more about semantic search, which was me talking about the mice and those computer words that were related to that mice word. So to help everybody understand, really what it was about. Keyword density is a thing of the past. It doesn't really exist. You need to use your keyword phrase so people understand what the main topic is for a given URL, but you don't need a specific percentage to get to be able to rank. It's just not the way Google works anymore. Okay. Just as a reminder, category pages also need descriptions, so don't just list the products. Make sure that everybody, human, search engines alike, can figure out what that category URL is about. Manufacturer part numbers, I find myself looking for these, especially when I am farther along my buyer journey where I already know what I need, and I have to find that specific manufacturer number. Here is another example from me building the house. I had a neighbor who was redoing their kitchen. They were getting rid of their stovetop. Would have fit perfectly in the kitchen that we had professionally designed. Why go buy a new one when theirs was perfectly nice? And I said I would take it. So I went to go install it right before I was supposed to move in. My builder didn't actually look for this until like a week before we were both supposed to have sign off and I was supposed to move in. And we needed to convert a natural gas stovetop to a propane gas top, because again, I live in the middle of nowhere. He didn't have any of the parts. There are none locally. I could only get them online. And so I again started my buying journey, not really sure what I was looking for. He helped me figure out the original terms. Well, then I finally found my way to the instructions for the stovetop, found what it was that we really needed, found those manufacturing numbers, and I tried to search for those manufacturing numbers online. I'll tell you, I needed to move into my house because I was living in an RV camper for over a week and I was done, right? I would have paid any amount of money to get that into me overnighted. I did not care at this point. I just wanted a house and to be able to do some laundry and have a real office, right? But guess what? I could not find them. It was so difficult because all of the websites that were selling this kind of product weren't using the manufacturing numbers, and so I couldn't find exactly what I needed. And it was really frustrating. And guess what I ended up having to do? I had to again go to the website or go to the internet, and instead of finding that, I had to go buy a brand new stovetop so I could actually move in. And again, I was, surfing for specific things, finally found one in stock at, I think, Lowe's, drove in, put way more money into that than I wanted to come back so the builder could install it the next day and I could move into my house and, and get sign off. But think about that buying journey, right? Those manufacturer part numbers were critical to me. I needed to be able to have them to be able, to search for them. So think about if you are reselling a product, where you're using them. Potentially the description, the product name, an H1, a URL, a meta title description, all of those different places you could be using those to help people like me who really have got to buy a product now, buy that product from you. Meta titles and descriptions, there's debate on how much these help SEO, but I will tell you they help click-through rates on the search engine results page. They help Google understand one URL from another. And when those two things happen, it will definitely increase your SEO because it's the utopian situation there. So you want to make sure that they are all unique. You want to make sure that they clearly describe what you are offering. Do not keyword stuff and have the same keyword 3 times in the meta title or description. That is not going to help you. Use helpful tools to keep you on track. If you're using WordPress, it's Yoast SEO and all in one. Use Dino Mapper and Screaming Frog to see what you existing have. Like, you know, because you can dump it into Excel for you, and you'll see a bunch of duplicates and go, oh my, I have a lot to fix. And then use tools like Google Search Console or the Moz bar, which is a Chrome extension, to see what's existing. Google Search Console will actually give you report issues to if it sees duplicates or, you know, too long, too short, things like that. So use those tools to help make sure your website is clean. This is like a great example. So, you know, you have to look at these and say, can you tell the difference between one search result and another? And that's always a great sense check, because it can get very confusing, especially when people are using the exact same phrases over and over and over. Well, I get, you know, in some of these I get a good sense, right? Snow boots, I don't know what wellies are. It's definitely not a US term, but snow boots I get. Fashion boots, yeah, I assume that it's not waterproof and it's going to look pretty as opposed to being functional. You know, and think through this, because this, if you've got the right verbiage here that can really tie into the search phrase and that human to help them click through, you will make sure, you know, that will help you win in search. Okay, breadcrumbs. Did you all know that breadcrumbs are good for SEO? Google loves them, so make sure that you include them if at all possible on your website. You know, your website can't be completely flat for those breadcrumbs to be of value. Did you know that schema and structured data can apply to breadcrumbs? It can. So try to implement that if at all possible. They really do help reduce bounce rates. They help the search engines figure out the architecture of your site, you know, and help it find related content. And look at that common problem. So 23% don't have breadcrumbs at all, and 68% suffer from subpar breadcrumb implementations. You know, I don't need to go through how to implement them in this webinar, but I want you to be aware of they are good. They do help with SEO, and they can help with structured data, and structured data is very important to today's SEO. So link building is it is the unsung hero of SEO, and it is surprising to me how many people just get it wrong. And that is small websites to enterprise websites. So in the last 2 days, I was looking at one of my students who I have a call with tomorrow, who would like me to do SEO for her site, and her internal links were a big hot mess. I was today working on an enterprise level client who has a massive website, and their internal links were a hot mess. And so what happens when your internal links are a hot mess? It's super confusing to the search engines on the nature of your content, what content's important, and what is the focus phrases or the search terms that relate to individual URLs. And it can create huge human issues, because you can frustrate your humans more than anything when you have just really poor internal links. And the common problems are, well, there's no strategy, that's one. They're broken. You forget to use 301 redirects when you're changing things and you're not modifying those links. The links are using the wrong keyword phrases to link to destination content. They're excessive. I could go on. There's just so many things that people do wrong with internal links. And I've got a whole webinar that's recorded on my YouTube channel. So if you're looking at this slide going, wow, I don't know what she's talking about, I'm not quite sure what's wrong or what's good and what's bad, make yourself a little post-it note, stick it on your monitor, go to YouTube, take the time to watch that webinar, because it will help you see internal links in a new light. They are important to Google. Google tells us they're important, and you really need to make sure that yours are spot on. Oops, sorry about that. So looking at the internal links in WooCommerce, and this, I do have this slides from that webinar just to kind of give you a feel of what I cover in the webinar. And this is right, this diagram, this image is from Google. It's straight from Google. So when Google's looking at your site, and Googlebot's the little guy that crawls through your store, and then you've got your human. When they look at this and they say, okay, I see like the homepage linking to this with baseball cards. I see some news pages within the site linking over. It could be a blog post, like a comparison blog post. It sees the text baseball cards and it links over to this page. I see a product list that links over as well, and they're all using that same verbiage of baseball cards. What that does is it provides consistency to everybody, and it really helps both the search engine and the human know what this destination page is about. But what if this said, this one called it purple peacocks, this one said sadness, this one said sunshine, and they're all linking over to this URL. Well, none of those make sense because they're all different and they're all pointing at the same URL. Now imagine all of those 3 different words are linking to the same URL from the same blog post. Yes, I do see that kind of thing happening all the time. That confuses the search engines and that creates problems, and it really frustrates your humans too. That's why the internal linking is really, really important, and you need to think through that. Another thing is when you're trying to build up your internal links, because they do help with your SEO, not just from a confusion standpoint, but also from making sure search engines understand what's going on. Don't overdo it, because the more links you have on one URL going to another, the more you degrade that link value. People call it link juice, but just know that one link has much more power going to a destination page than a blog post that may have 20 links going to a destination page and then 19 other places. All right, so social media, super important still. Again, that's an area where people are not sure how much of an impact it has in SEO, but I can tell you when I had my theme store, I tested this. If I launched products and didn't have good social media presence as soon as they launched and really was engaged in getting people to come to those product pages through social media, they suffered and they didn't rank. I want you to make sure that your accounts are active, you are sharing your products in social media, you have social sharing icons on your products so other people can help share your content. Think of creative ways to get those products out there through social media so it's just not you pitching your product. Be creative, you've got creativity and you let it come out through social and build a community with it, and then you will have brand ambassadors who will also promote and share your product just because they love it and they want to support you. So today's world of search cannot be achieved. You can't have good SEO today without technical SEO. Well, what the heck's technical SEO? Here's some of the things that would relate to an e-commerce store, specifically WooCommerce, with technical SEO. It's the Yoast SEO plugin, the regular one, and then the additional one for WooCommerce. Love that plugin. It's how you manage your tags and categories, and not indexing specific URLs. It's broken links. It's the page ordering that you have. HTML and XML sitemaps. Both of them need to be there. Both of them need to be healthy, and the XML sitemap needs to be pointed over to Google and Bing. It's accessibility and how you've implemented JavaScript. It's code validation with like the W3. It's mobile performance and optimizing the speed of your site. It's structured data, and it's things like your robots.txt file. All of those are important. Which ones are really hot topics? Well, JavaScript, because that can make or break a site. Mobile, performance, structured data, super important right now. And this little guy, growing accessibility. Google is pushing more and more information out about mobile, performance, structured data, JavaScript, and the most recent ones that I keep seeing from them is accessibility. So if your site's not currently accessible, you want to make sure it is, and there's lots of ways that you can test that and validate that and fix that. Okay, just a few last points that before we go to Q&A is structured data with schema and rich snippets. Structured data has been coming and getting more and more implemented, and again, this is something that Google keeps pushing and pushing harder, and it keeps updating and adding to it and using more and more of it. And it's using that to create those rich snippets in the search engine results pages, but also to better understand your site. Think of Google this way. Google is just zeros and ones, and it's kind of like a toddler, right? When you have structured data and you have a common language of schema, it will absolutely help the search engines understand your products and your store as a whole more like a human does, because we're now all speaking a common language of schema. And if you can do this right or you can do it wrong. If you're using WooCommerce SEO, throw in the Yoast plugin, because that is going to give you a jump start on creating structured data and it's effortless to install. There's other plugins that you can use, and then you can test that with Google Structured Data testing tool to make sure that you have it implemented correctly. Okay, few last items is those XML sitemaps. I mentioned earlier, make sure that they are present, they're correct. You don't have stuff sitting there you don't need to have in there, and that you've linked them up to the search engines, and then you go back to the search engines to make sure that there are no errors. If there's errors, clean it up, right? Get rid of stuff if you're seeing a bunch of 404s or inability to crawl URLs, create 301 redirects for those 404s, and validate your code right through the W3 to see if there's a reason why Google can't quite get through that URL that's listed. The health of your website is within your hands, but you need to look at tools like Google Search Console and the results of your XML sitemap to make sure that it is healthy and you are making the job easier on the search engines. We know mobile responsive is important, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. We know that it's been more and more of a push. If your website isn't mobile responsive or isn't great at mobile responsive, you need to make sure you use some of those tools at the bottom to really review it, specifically this guy right here, which is Google. And so you can see some common issues and resolve them, because the world is more and more mobile and you need to make sure your site supports it. All right. Speed and performance. I have a webinar coming up in September on this, so I won't spend a lot of time on it now. I'm bringing in Pat Ramsey from Crowd Favorite because he knows much more about this than I do. So join us for that. If you feel like you need to beef up on what your knowledge is for speed and performance, you can sign up for that at RebeccaGill.com. But it's important to the search engines. Liquid Web actually just released some information on how they've been working on this with WooCommerce, and gosh, they're so great with speed and performance. So pay attention to this. I'm not telling you to go and sign up for Liquid Web. You can, but I'm not telling you have to. But I'm telling you that you need to make sure that your host and your WordPress theme supports performance and good support. Or performance. You need to be worrying about all of these things, optimizing your images and minifying your resources and leveraging that browser caching. So if you don't have any of those in place, or you don't know what they mean, join me next month with Pat so you can learn about them. And by the way, you can check all this with Google. There's there's tools for Google Search Console. Google has a Lighthouse app or extension that you can load into Chrome that will give you some great statistics. Okay, so I've pushed through those last couple of slides quick because I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A, because there were questions coming in. So let me get these, let's see, hold on, I gotta get these showing for one. There we go. Now I can see it. Okay. So if you've got questions you want me to answer, I don't mind going a few minutes late since I ran more than my usual 45 minutes. So throw in some questions into the chat box and I'll try to get through as many as I can. Okay. Let's see. Those of you who are saying hi to me in the chat box, thanks so much, because it's nice seeing the names that I recognize and kind of my online friends. Okay. Oh, okay. So here's one question from Danielle. I can't attend the webinar right now. Will it be uploaded on YouTube? Yes, I said that at the beginning of the webinar. It'll get sent out via GoToWebinar. I will also post it later today to YouTube. If you go to RebeccaGill.com, scroll to the bottom of it, there'll be a link with the social icon over to YouTube, and you'll find this one later today and then all of my prior ones. So lots of good information. Okay, so this is a question from Jay. Big dilemma for our store, product descriptions when all products are almost all the same and not much to say about them. For example, 16 greeting cards that all say happy birthday and they're blank inside. Okay, so Jay, I would ask you for that then. Clearly all the birthday cards don't look the same on the outside, right? Do some have balloons? Do some have characters? Do some have sparkles? Do some sing me happy birthday when you open them up? Or what is the case? What makes those different? And try to think of it from that way. You could also think about who do they fit? Are they for little kids? Are they for adults? Are they pastel colors? Are they vibrant? What is it about those different ones that really make them feel unique? And if there's nothing, if they're that generic that they all are kind of like the same, then you are going to struggle with the product descriptions. And I would just try to do your best to make sure that they're different so the search engines aren't confused, because you might not be able to put enough that actually will help be stellar standouts in search and bring traffic in. But we definitely want to make sure that we keep information, unique for people. Okay, so the next question is one category per SKU. No, a SKU would be per product and a category would be for multiple products. So high level category, underneath the category, you could have 50 products and each 50 products could have its own SKU or stop keeping unit identifier or something like that is what it is. It's like basically like a product number. But it is typically a product number per or a SKU per product, and then those products reside under a category or sometimes multiple categories. Okay, we've had problems with Yoast breadcrumbs versus WooCommerce breadcrumbs. Had to disable Yoast. I would love to be able to talk about that, but that is much more technical than what I myself know, because as Carrie Dills always laughs, I say I have people for that because that gets into more of the coding, aspects of the site. But I'm sure that there are ways to work through all that, because breadcrumbs are good and they are worth taking the time to kind of filter through whatever hiccups you might have from a technical standpoint. Is the user sitemap HTML, not XML, a good implementation of internal linking? So this is a great question, Jay. So, you want that HTML sitemap accessible to humans and the search engines both. You want to have that so that they can both quickly get to a full list, or not a full list, but a more expanded list of top destinations for the store to really find out where they want to go. I use an HTML sitemap all the time because I can't stand having to click through a bazillion pages to get to the result I want. So they're great from a human standpoint. They're also really good for search engine standpoint because it again allows the search engines to hit that HTML sitemap and then quickly get to a ton of links, and those links, get over to find that content. Is that the only internal linking you should do? No, but it is definitely an important one, and you need to have a strategy for additional internal links. Okay, so ReSocial, Google absolutely refuses to show search results for branded Instagram accounts. Most important social accounts. It's referenced in structured data and linked to from website. What else can we try? So I think what you're saying here is that inside of your website, you have links over to your branded account on Instagram, and that should be part of your brand's profile on Google, and Google is not showing that for some reason. And I honestly don't know, what the answer to that is, first and foremost, I'd make sure that I check the website itself and verify that there's not conflicting information somewhere, whether it might be the Yoast SEO plugin main settings and then a social sharing plugin. You might have like conflicting information. That's what I would check first. And if it's just Google being persnickety, I wish I had an answer around that, but unfortunately they can just be annoying sometimes, and we can't always figure out why they do what they do. We can ask though. There's definitely places that you can ask online. There's groups that you can ask to in Facebook that someone might actually know more than what I would do for an answer for that. Let's see, an official WooCommerce AMP support would be nice. Yeah, I agree with you. I wish that we had more WordPress plugins for AMP and for structured data. I think that there's just really a gap in the WordPress world for structured data and for AMP. I mean, there are some plugins for AMP, but most people don't know whether or not they should be using it. They don't use it unless they're, big publishers. Which, in that case is fine. But everybody, if you've got structured data that applies to your site, and stores definitely do with products, everybody needs to be embracing structured data, and we need to have some really good plugins to help make that happen. Shameless plug, the Structured Data Test Button plugin is available on WordPress.org. So that's Structured Data Test Button. So I don't know what it is. I haven't tried it, but one of our listeners does. So I just want to put that out there. So could you show a live WooCommerce shop and how to add SEO and where? Peter, I would love to. I don't have time in this webinar, but I might be able to do that in a future webinar. And if you would be so kind to go to my website, RebeccaGill.com, shoot me a contact note that tells me that you'd love to see that, then I will make sure that I try to get that on the schedule moving forward. So Teresa would like to know, how do we create an HTML sitemap? Yoast SEO creates XML, but is there a way to create the HTML? Well, Teresa, I've always used Genesis and the Genesis framework, which has the archive, page template that creates that for me. So I've not had to do that. You can create them manually yourself easily with just a regular page, and I would have it like full width though, for sure. And then there's other plugins that you can get and install that can help create that for you. But so there's definitely different ways to go about that. Ben would like to know, are slides available? Yes, actually, Ben, they're in the GoToWebinar control panel for you, sitting right there. I forgot to mention that. So yeah, there was a PDF of the slides available right within this control panel, so you can download them. I don't know what you guys see on the attendee side, but there's definitely a link waiting for you. Okay, how do we differentiate a post that about something and the landing page for the same thing? Say, for example, fireproof rugs just uses an internal link to show is the right destination for Google to send people. So here's what I would do. So if I've got, Cheryl, if I have a category for fireproof rugs or a product, I guess I wouldn't have a product, it would be a category maybe. So that's one, and then let's say that I've got a blog post that I like, talk much longer in depth on. The blog post should have like a different focus keyword phrase. And then within that blog post, you would use fireproof rugs to link over to the category fireproof rugs, which is an indicator and a signal to Google that that's where the destination of that keyword phrase belongs, right? If you don't have a category for it, you have different categories in your site, and fireproof rugs is your blog post, right? So like in the blog post is talking about fireproof rugs and why they're important and things like that. Then you wouldn't use the fireproof rugs phrase to link over somewhere else, right? You would want to make sure that you say, so for example, we have multiple fireproof rugs available in our store, and they reside within the Oriental rugs category, or something like that, and then you're using those links to support those destination pages and to keep people on the site and to make sure that they're actually purchasing your products. Okay, Stacy says, my company is an event rental company using WooCommerce. Does it hurt having shop as part of my URL for products? So basically there's a parent URL within the structure, and then that says shop, and then right after shop is the actual product. No, Stacy, that's perfectly fine, because what you're doing is you're helping the search engines understand that your first football pass challenge, which is your product or your category, is part of the store, right? And that shop is the store hub or section of the website, and you're helping Google understand that's different than maybe a blog or a content silo that you might have in Pages. And the URL you gave me is definitely not too long at all. The concern we would have is when I say like longer URLs, is the rental company example. So the URL would be shop, and then after shop would be tents, and then after tents would be winter, and then after winter would be like some other description. So now we're like 4 or 5 levels deep just to get to the actual product, and that becomes way too long. Okay, if I have 600 plus products, should I focus on optimizing categories? I can't see myself setting a focus keyword in Yoast for all 600 products. Ben, I can't either. That would probably drive me crazy. So I can't answer where your focus keywords should live, because I have not done keyword research yet. So I would tell you to do competitive research, and keyword research go through that process of marking things for relevance, saying what's important to you and your target market, deciding what keyword phrases you really want to rank for, and then looking at your available locations within the site, whether they be categories or products, and deciding where they should live. And if that's the case, then you can go ahead and only focus on making really unique content and content and meta on those locations. Now the rest of them need to be clean, but they don't need to be, super fancy and all of that goodness, because they're not going to have that value. Let's see, will you do another webinar on schema this fall? Susanna, possibly, yes. The issue I honestly have with that is schema is very technical, and I'm like an SEO consultant and not an actual coder. But what I might do is bring in someone who is a coder and a developer and does have a lot of experience with schema, because I think that they would be able to do a better representation of that training and making sure that we're all thinking through of the nuances of schema and structured data. I do have a webinar from last fall, and it's a Scooby-Doo, a Scooby-Doo kind of themed webinar that talks about structured data and schema. And so if you're not familiar with schema and structured data, visit the YouTube channel, because that will be a good webinar to kind of get a basis of what schema is and structured data and how it's applied. And it was Halloween, which is why I did Scooby-Doo as a theme. So let's see, next question. In your winter boots example, the product had 2 categories and thus 2 pages. Does it make more sense to only have 1 category per product and not winding up with 2 URLs? Absolutely. So if you're including the category within the product URL, then yes, you don't want to have that category assigned to all of these different categories, or you only want one of those categories to actually create a URL for the product. And I'm pretty sure that there's, that is an option in certain plugins and things like that. But yeah, we definitely don't want to have one product assigned to 5 different categories if those categories are all creating URLs, because that kind of starts to be a really hot mess for everybody involved. Okay, someone just shared for, I think it was Teresa, WP Sitemap plugin page is a good plugin that you can use to create a sitemap. All right. Another thing I was hoping to see a webinar on is GA properties for WooCommerce. Okay, so yeah, so this is another one. If you guys have, whoever's on here, you girls, you guys, have ideas that you would like to see future training webinars, just shoot me a message through the RebeccaGill.com site there on the contact page, and I would love to hear your feedback on where I can create new, fresh content and training for you that would be helpful. Google Tag Manager is the next one that someone gave a suggestion on. So just for all of you that's on here, Google Tag Manager is something, if you're not aware of, you should become aware of it. And that's another one where it starts to get very technical. And I would need to bring in somebody smarter than me on the dev side of things to be able to really talk through that. But that's something to get on your radar, because it has more purposes than just logging your Google Analytics code. It can bring forth the Google Analytics connection, as well as a host of many other things. And so, keep that on your radar. I'm not telling you have to go implement it tomorrow, but I want you to, if you hear it mentioned, kind of zoom your attention in, because it should be on your radar and it should be something that you're moving forward with. Okay, so last question is from Paula. What's the best tool for optimizing semantic search? Paula, there is not a plugin that's going to help you optimize for semantic search. What you do need to do is just understand what it is and how it's used, and that will help you along the way. So that's our last question for today. I thank you all for joining me. I will be posting this video up to YouTube this afternoon, and you will be getting an email out from GoToWebinar with the recording as well. Thanks so much.